Sorry.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Did Jim? Oh, I don't see anything. Okay. Well, as you all know, the topic is cultivating meaningful community partnerships. Thank you all for joining us. So this is just a brief overview of the agenda. So first, I was going to do an introduction on the topic. Then we're going to hear from a guest speaker from Kiva at 10:30. And I don't think we're having the best practices anymore, but that was supposed to happen. And then it's going to be kind of the heart of the webinar, just talking about best practices for working with underserved populations. And those are some of the subtopics that I thought were relevant to cover. And we can also cover any other topics that you guys can think of. And then I was going to say, how does this topic relate to us, relate to AslyumConnect? And then there will be a little bit of time for questions if anyone has it, or any other topics that people want to discuss. So just briefly, an introduction to the topic. So I think the first question is, who constitutes an underserved population? It's not actually a definition that everyone agrees on. So the bullet points, just many communities have populations that may be considered underserved. So their voices and needs are often unintentionally overlooked. There's not always that malicious intent, but unfortunately not everyone's voice is always heard. The designation of this group of population is not only based upon the inherent attributes of the individuals in the population, such as gender, age, race, ethnicity, but also a set of circumstances which may cause certain demographic groups to experience greater challenges, barriers. So again, it's not just those attributes, but also circumstances and opportunities that people unfortunately don't always have. Many sources do describe underserved populations in terms of vulnerability. Does anyone have any questions about that? No? So sample characteristics of underserved. So people can say in terms of gender, socioeconomic status, special needs, disability, ethnicity, and race, income, language, literacy, geographic location. These are just some examples of ways that people can be underserved, or if you fall into a certain category, it may be unfortunately more likely that your voice is not going to be heard in terms of whichever society that you're from. This is just a quote that I took explaining the underserved in a healthcare context. I'm not going to read the entire quote because it's very long, but I thought that it was an interesting way to look at it, because healthcare, unfortunately, a lot of people are considered underserved. So yeah, I think the last sentence is really relevant here. So it says their health and healthcare problems intersect with social factors, including housing, poverty, and inadequate education. So again, it's not just race, ethnicity, age, sex. It's also the social factors that are really making these people underserved. And that's kind of my introduction thoughts, and before Justin speaks in like 15 minutes. So does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I actually do.
Okay.
So I was wondering, looking at this definition, or just the word itself, word underserved, it seems to imply that one party is failing to provide for another. And I was wondering if you had any immediate thoughts about whether this was we need stronger public infrastructure, or more support from the private sector, or community-based organizations. Generally, what is this referring to, the word underserved?
Yes, I didn't love the word underserved. It's just unfortunately the word that a lot of people do use in terms of global development, at least in the context that I've seen. I guess I think that the underserved kind of reflects the reality that unfortunately there are often people in power, and then people that don't have the power, whether that's in terms of income or just in terms of having your voice represented. So if that's the case, I guess the infrastructure probably has to be improved. But yeah, I mean, do you guys think that there's a better word for this than underserved? Maybe less, because I know underserved is one of those politically charged words that people can really have an adverse reaction to, as well as vulnerable. But any thoughts on that, anyone? No.
Feel free to take a moment to formulate thoughts or a question. You're also welcome to write in the chat if that's easier. This is an ongoing discussion, so don't feel like as we move on throughout the forum that we're closing like certain parts of the discussion.
Mhm.
I'm curious, what are some alternatives and what are the kind of political implications of those alternatives?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know, I need a moment to think. Maybe everyone can take a moment to think about that question.
Because one thing that I think of is that often people use the word minority to describe
Yeah.
people who are underserved.
Uh-huh.
But of course, that has other implications. And one of the realities is that people who are underserved are not the minority in many cases. So I think in some ways that's an argument for this term, that it's referring to the service itself that is not coming to support people, as opposed to
Yeah.
some sort of analysis of a group that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. I guess another word that I've heard used in this context, which I don't know if it's better, it's probably not better, but like disadvantaged, like where it says right there, include economically disadvantaged, kind of implying that it's not really the person's fault, but a lack of opportunity, which is often the case.
Yeah, or underprivileged is another one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I guess also like, who decides that you're
Right.
Yeah.
privileged? I don't think
Yeah.
you come out of the womb thinking like, yes, that's what I'll be.
Yeah.
Jamel, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Raina.
I was just going to say, Jamel, are you calling from a different country? Where are you calling from? If you're
I'm calling from France, from Paris.
Oh, cool.
Exactly.
So how do they talk about these things in France? What terms do they use to describe what?
So we don't speak a lot community here. Community is really very political term. So we don't speak a lot about. So I discovered this like really word and the use of the word only the last year when I was doing an exchange program between La Sorbonne University and New York University. And I discovered that in the US. But here in France, we don't use a lot the word community. So that's why it's really very important, because with like my European perspective and going to the US and discovering that there is a lot of work doing into communities and with the people of communities, I was like, I don't know, it's a perspective that can allow associations, I don't know, political parties and like leaders and students to work with people from the social climate, like from the social landscape, and it makes easier the contact with the people and the road, like in the social normal life. So yeah, the access to I don't know, to the city, to the local, like to the locals, like to the local people. So for me, this culture of community partnership is very important to develop a lot of policies in some places and I don't know, spaces where there is some social problems, I don't know, housing problems, healthcare problems, and it makes easier, I think, the dialogue between, for example, because the majority of the people that are creating and leading the community partnership are politicians or like big developers. So for me, it's really very important to develop this perspective and this community partnership term, and to make easier the dialogue between, like I said to you, like the political leaders and the normal people, like the ordinary people in a city or in the rural places or in everywhere, I think. And I had like a lot of experience in New York when I went there, because we work with the community gardens. And in New York, the community gardens, it's a place where, for example, the mayor, the leaders of associations, social housing in every field, and students, professors, like all kind of people meet, like around a dinner or around a cultural or artistic project. And I was like in the arts community in the Lower East Side in Manhattan, and we create a lot of partnership between politicians and like the local people for housing problems and also financial problems. And after like 3-4 months, we had like really great results. And all of that is because of a common and shared experiences that we use and transfer and translated in actions. And these actions allowed associations to have funds, allowed the politicians to know more about the reality of their political space, political territory, and allowed the students, like Lower East Side, we are in the area of New York University, so we didn't knew about like this kind of problems. So allowed the educational also community of New York to know more about the problems of these people that they are just near to us, like behind the university. So like community partnerships allowed a lot of community practice, community actions, and it was really in a very convivial, like very, I don't know, very nice, like very nice ambience, like very nice manner to communicate their problems. It was no like tension, no like people angry or something like that. It was around the dinner and all the people and drinks, and all the people shares also their cultures. So it was also an intercultural dialogue. So between the Latin Americans, the American, European, Oriental, like, yeah, a lot of cultural identities and citizenships. So it was really a big success. And the experience continued with the New York University and the professors and students and all the community. So yeah, it's very important. So that's why I'm here from Paris following this discussion, because I want really to discover more about your point of view about this subject. And I believe like it's very important to develop the community partnership in all cultures, all continents, and all over the world. It's also, I think, it's a global goal. It's a global perspective to allow also good relationship between also nations. So we can go, we can like have more ambitions when we succeed to cultivate like a meaningful community partnership, to use it for international a relationship between nations and countries. So it's inspiring. It's an inspiration. So this is my point of view.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I actually think our guest speaker is online. I see his name, Justin.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Are you ready to go now? I think this is actually a good part. I'm just going to stop. But thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And for everyone, this is Justin Renfro. He's our guest speaker from Kiva. He's a program manager for the Kiva Zip program in the U.S., and we're very lucky to have him with us today. And Justin, if you're ready, I'll just turn it over to you if you want to.
Yeah, for sure. Hello, everyone. My name's Justin. I lead the U.S. program at Kiva. It's called Kiva Zip. You can go to our website at kivazip.org. I guess today I'm just going to give just a brief overview about kind of who we are, what we do, and what we're all about. So Kiva's been around for 10 years. We're based in San Francisco, and we started making loans to farmers in Uganda. And over the past 10 years, we've created a lot of impact. We've supported over 1.5 million entrepreneurs, and we funded over $850 million in loans. And a lot of times when people say, oh, what's Kiva? I'll explain it like, so you know Kickstarter, where you can go like fund a sexy watch project? It's kind of like that, except you're investing in farmers in Africa and entrepreneurs all over the world. I think once you have a deeper understanding of kind of, you know, what we're all about, creating impact on a global basis, I think it's important to note why and what we do is so cool. And I think the real value add of Kiva in the marketplace is the fact that the money recycles. We're essentially hundreds of $1 million are recycling in a revolving loan fund. So I've got $25 in my wallet right now. I could take 25 of those dollars and lend them, let's say, to a farmer in Uganda. And he's going to invest that money to buy a cow for his farm. That cow's going to produce added revenue for him and his family. Then he's going to have enough revenue where he can repay me my $25. And then I can take that same $25 and invest it in an artisan in the Philippines. And then she'll repay me. And then I support a bike shop in San Francisco. They'll repay me. And I use that same $25 to support an ice cream shop in Pittsburgh. And essentially the money just cycles over and over and over again. And we're doing about $150 million of loans a year, about $3 million a week. And that $3 million a week is just recycled money. So it's not a new $3 million that goes into our system. It's just money that's recycling to create more and more impact and support more and more entrepreneurs around the world. So I think that that's really cool. In terms of Kiva.org's global impact, the way in which we operate is by partnering with microfinance institutions around the world. We have the luxury of providing them with 0% interest capital. So we have the luxury of picking the best organizations around the world that have a huge a huge focus on creating impact and driving positive change in their communities. So we do a lot of great work with a lot of great organizations around the world. Kiva Zip is a little bit different. So we decided to go into the US market about 5 years ago. And the reason that we went to the US market was we're seeing the same problems in the US as we see abroad. And that is entrepreneurs need access to capital. They're not able to get money to help them launch their businesses. And it's a really profound problem in how it actually works in practice. When you go to a bank and you're an entrepreneur, whether it's a bank, whether that's the Small Business Administration, even whether it's a microlender or your local credit union, if you're looking to launch your new business, you can't get capital if you haven't been in business for 2 years, if you don't have a certain credit score, if you don't have, if your bank statements say your net worth is not high enough, if you don't have the cash flows, if your tax returns don't look good. We've gotten to a point in the US where when we evaluate credit worthiness of an entrepreneur, we're just looking at numbers associated with that person. We're looking at their credit score, their net worth, what their tax return said, it's a clusterfuck of bullshit in my humble opinion, that people are just being evaluated by numbers. It's like, give me your social security number, give me access to your bank accounts, and we'll tell you whether you're credit worthy. We've completely lost that human element, that relationship between people is absent in our current lending system in this country. So what we're trying to do is kind of bring back the old banking in the digital age. And what that means is, think back 100 years ago in 1916, you could go to your local bank and get a loan based on a handshake. The implications of that handshake were, I know you, you're respected in the community, I trust you're going to repay me. That's it. That's how capital worked, not just 100 years ago, but for thousands of years. It was about the human relationship between me and the person in my community who had a bank. That's how money systems worked. So we're trying to bring that philosophy, that, it's kind of like that virtual handshake into our system today. So what we say is our program focuses on social underwriting. And to me, social underwriting means not underwriting based on your credit score and your net worth and your cash flows and your tax statements, but underwriting based on your character and your reputation. Now, I'm based in San Francisco. I don't know all the entrepreneurs that come through. I don't know what their character and what their reputation is, and I'm not in a position to figure that out for every entrepreneur we support. So we have two ways in figuring out whether someone has the character and reputation in which they're creditworthy. The first is to apply and get a Kiva loan. You need to lend $25 to another entrepreneur here in the US or anywhere in the world. We want you to have that mentality of pay it forward and support other people. If you're not willing to lend $25 to another entrepreneur, it's not that you're a bad person. It's just that you're not the type of person that we want in our community. That we feel that's a powerful indicator of someone's character, is if they're willing to pay it forward and support other entrepreneurs. It's not all about themselves. The second piece is we will ask you to invite a certain number of people from your own community to lend to you. So before your loan is visible to Kiva's community of lenders around the world, you have to invite, let's say, 10, 15, 20 people from your own community to lend you $25. If you've got 10, 15, 20 people in your own community that are willing to support you, that's a good indicator that you've got a community of support around you. You've built a good reputation, and you've got that foundation of support that indicates, you're a good credit risk for us. So that's that social underwriting. And the beauty of it is, if we think you're really risky based on different financial factors, because we'll still look at that stuff, we just won't make credit decisions on you. So if we think you're really risky, we'll ask you to invite more people from your community to kind of build out that social capital that you need. If we see you as not being very risky, we'll lower the amount of people in your own community. So as opposed to saying yes or no, or yes, but the interest rate's going to be 50% because you're really risky, what we can say is, you seem really risky to us, so you're going to have to invite 23 people from your own community to lend you $25. So we're not saying no, we're just saying you need to establish that social capital using your different risk factors as a way to say, you have to engage with less people in your own community or more people in your own community. And then once you do that, you make that loan to another entrepreneur and you find those people in your own community to lend you $25, then you're able to fundraise from people around the world. And we have a 90% success rate. So to kind of get to, what you guys are talking about, I think that, we have three main goals of the Kiva program. The first and most important to me is expanding access to capital. I think there's a huge issue when it comes to lending in the United States. From the big guys to the small guys, it's very focused on numbers. And what we're trying to do is say, it's not about numbers, it's about people. And we should be able to support more entrepreneurs by evaluating someone's creditworthiness based on their reputation and character. The second is we want to increase the social capital that you have by connecting you to a global community of people who want to support you. So when you go on Kiva, on average, 100 people around the world are going to lend you money. And the majority of that 100 people are strangers, people who have no idea who you are. I'll give you a specific story. I was working with a bike shop in San Francisco. Her name's Tammy. She's a transgender entrepreneur who just started a really small bike shack in San Francisco. It's not much bigger than a closet. And she went to the Kiva Zip program looking for $5,000 so she could buy the initial inventory so she could start renting bikes. This is in the really early days. No one would touch her. No lender would touch her. But more importantly than her not being able to go to anywhere else to get capital, when she started fundraising on our website, literally 150 people in less than 24 hours got her from $0 to $5,000. And those 150 people were saying, we believe in you. We share we share that love. We understand where you're coming from. We want you to succeed. Being an entrepreneur and starting your own business, a lot of times you're doing it on your own. You don't really, there's not really a lot of people saying, we believe in you, you got this, you're doing the right things. That validation can be tough. And for that reason, building that self-esteem and building that confidence is really important, especially for someone who is formerly homeless, transgender, doesn't have a huge support network around her. She comes onto the Kiva platform and 150 people just shower her with love and community and confidence. I think that human connection of people getting connected with hundreds of people around the world is really, really powerful and something that I think is hugely valuable. And the third is the democratization of capital. That being, instead of us, a single institution, Kiva, deciding who gets a loan and who doesn't get a loan, there's now hundreds of thousands of people around the world that are making those decisions. We're not making the loans ourselves. Everyone goes to our website and makes these loans in increments. That provides us two big benefits. The first is it allows us to decentralize the risk. So I don't really care about my $25. I would like it to be repaid. It's my expectation that it's going to be repaid, but I'm willing to support that ex-convict that's starting his own business when he won't be touched by anyone in the financial industry. My risk tolerance is pretty high to create impact by lending to Curtis in Oakland, who's trying to start his own cleaning business and has been in prison for the past 10 years. A bank's risk tolerance won't touch that. My risk tolerance will, because, I feel for Curtis and I want to support him. So that allows us to go downstream and support more entrepreneurs that are less and less creditworthy. So supporting more impactful entrepreneurs, more startups, more ex-cons, more entrepreneurs that are in the unbankable world. The second is that it builds community around these entrepreneurs and allows a more equitable funding landscape where, maybe I don't think your idea is that exciting, but maybe these 10 people do. and vice versa. And that ability to decentralize the risk and decentralize the impact so that hundreds of thousands of people can make these decisions rather than just the top person at the organization making these decisions. I think that's really powerful. So that's what Kiva and Kiva Zip's all about. I'm really excited about what we're doing here. I guess I would say there's 2 call to actions. The first is go to our website and read through the different stories. If you go to the Kiva Zip Lend tab at zip.kiva.org, and then you'll see a Lend tab. In the search bar, you'll see that you can type in a name. I'd ask that you type in Curtis. He's the guy who's starting that mobile wash company, power wash company in Oakland. I met him yesterday and was totally inspired. And when I read his story, it was like, holy shit, like this is why I do what I do. And these are the types of people I exist to support. This is my tribe. So please feel free to, go read Curtis's story and maybe support him with $25. The second is, if you know a really awesome entrepreneur that could use something like Kiva, please feel free to connect them with me, and I'd be happy to help them out. My email is justin@kiva.org. You can also go directly to our website and apply for a loan by clicking on the Borrow tab at the top. So anyone in the U.S. is able to go to our website and apply directly for a Kiva loan. So would love if you could spread the word and read Curtis's story. I think that'd be awesome. I guess maybe there's Q&A. Don't really know. Julene, I think.
Yeah, awesome.
You're running the show.
I'll just throw in a comment, and then Katie, you're welcome to facilitate Q&A. Thank you so much for joining. That was so well articulated, and I was looking through the website earlier, and I had so many questions about how the business or the organization operated, and you just completely explained everything through and through. I've been tweeting some really great key points from that, so our students are going to be learning a lot from this talk that you just shared with us.
Sweet. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really interesting. I'm going to open it up now to questions if anyone has a first question for Justin. Okay, I can go first.
Classic crickets on the webinar.
Yeah.
When you're anonymous, you don't be shy. I won't bite.
I'll go first, and then hopefully other people will have questions. But when I read the Kiva website, I read that the Kiva model is hoping to expand into other geographies. And so one of the topics that we'll be talking about today is the concept of a needs assessment. So I was wondering if you could comment on what research you would have to do before you're comfortable with expansion. So like, what are the steps that you would have to take before scaling this model?
Yeah. Well, our entire operation is built on the back of PayPal. So we disperse our loans on PayPal. Mm-hmm. We collect repayments on PayPal. When you make a loan, it's through PayPal. So pretty much as it relates to expansion, anyone who has a PayPal account should be able to take advantage of a program like Kiva in the future. And that's how we would expand, is just, expand the opportunity to anyone that's on our existing, track, which is PayPal financial track. What expansion really comes down to is the internal infrastructure. So managing a program like this, we're quickly learning that there's, scale problems, not problems, just challenges, in that, as we make thousands of loans, we also have hundreds of entrepreneurs that are late on their repayments, and we have to manage that. There's hundreds of entrepreneurs that are applying for loans every week. How do you manage the customer service and the servicing of these loans? So there's there's big questions that we need to figure out around the internal infrastructure and just, the growth, where we're at from a growth perspective now, before we really want to explore, like big expansion. Once we have a more solid infrastructure, especially on the technical and engineering side, which is relatively weak, that'll give us big opportunities to be able to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have a question for Justin?
I actually do. I hope I'm not cutting off anyone. If you're muted, feel free to unmute yourself. Sometimes I mute participants so that the feedback is reduced. So my question was, you were emphasizing how you don't just go by numbers. You measure human potential, and it's just like a very different approach to how you measure success. And I was wondering, in your organization's maybe reports or language, how you reflect that, because it seems difficult to capture the success that you're describing without like a clear-cut graph. Like, how do you speak to other investors or stakeholders about this kind of success?
Yeah. Well, when an entrepreneur applies for a loan, we ask them a lot of questions. What's your household income? What are your debts? Are you a veteran? How many years have you been in business? What do your cash flows look like? So we're collecting a ton of data for every single entrepreneur that applies for a Kiva loan. And then we're able to aggregate that data and pull key numbers and say 40% of our entrepreneurs are African American, whereas in the traditional lending industry, 5% of African American, that portfolio looks more like 5%. So we're serving 8x the percent of African Americans in our community as the banking industry. We know that there are hard restrictions on years in business. Over 50% of our businesses are under, I think it was like 65% of our businesses were under 2 years in operation. Those are the most unbankable entrepreneurs because banks won't touch them. So we have a very good understanding of who our entrepreneurs are as they come into the Kiva process, because we're asking them a lot of questions in that loan application. And that's generally how we assess the impact of the types of clients that we're seeing on a weekly or monthly basis. Then the harder question is, how do you evaluate the impact of your loans a year after, 2 years after, 3 years after? That's a very, very big challenge. And that's a challenge that a lot of nonprofits have is evaluating impact in the future. So 1 year, 2, 3. For us, it's very easy to collect that data because you have to fill out the loan application to get a loan. So we just get that data. You don't have to fill out a post-loan evaluation 2 years after. If you don't want to do it, you're not going to do it. So being able to figure out like what is that true impact 2-3 years down the line has been challenging for us.
Great, thank you.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, Rena, go ahead.
I was going to ask, so are there any elements to the program that connect the people who have received loans so that they can learn from each other or organize together, or if there are other aspects of that come to play?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways we do that. The first is that when you have a loan on Kiva and people around the world start lending to you, there's an open dialogue between you and those lenders. We have a conversations tab where you can update the lenders. They can ask you questions. You can ask for stuff. They can ask for stuff. So it's a very kind of like free-flowing dialogue between a borrower and all of their lenders. A lot of times it doesn't really do much, but sometimes we see it do amazing stuff. So there's a spectrum, and that connection between a borrower and all of their lenders is powerful. Then on the borrower-to-borrower connection, we see that mostly in our core markets. So we have a huge presence in the Bay Area, in New York, in Louisville, in Milwaukee, Columbus, Ohio. So we've got about 15 strategic markets where we've created a lot of impact. And in most of those markets, we have people on the ground that are supporting our growth. And they facilitate a lot of marketplaces, a lot of meetups, opportunities to collaborate with one another. And then the third way is more offline through our resource network. So for example, there's an organization called SCORE. It's a nationwide organization that provides free business training and mentorship from retired business executives to new entrepreneurs. We'll do our best to promote good resources, good free resources like SCORE to all of our entrepreneurs so they can get connected. We just provide money. We don't actually do any training or services. So we see it as an important aspect of our role to connect our entrepreneurs with that training and with those resources that can help them be more successful.
Great, thank you. I think, does anyone have any final questions before we let Justin go? Any last question? No? Oh, wait, maybe?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, great.
How you connect? Like, do you connect? Are you doing a work of connection between like the people that they are in need and the people that they are helping you, for example, to having funds? And we are speaking about the community, like how we can develop like the community fields. Are you working with, because I'm art student, so are you working with artists or something like that to promote like some projects or some difficulties in the communities? Because through my own experience, I was in New York the last year, and my school, New York University, and the local associations help like people from the community to overcome their problems according to housing and financial issues.
Yeah, good question. So myself and my team has built out a nationwide network of over 700 partners that focus on economic development or support entrepreneurship in some capacity in their own communities. So for example, in New York, there's a city-funded program called the Business Solution Center. There's one in each borough. They support entrepreneurs that come in their own communities. And they have all partnered with Kiva. And what they do is they have a link into us and our team in New York, and they're proactively recommending entrepreneurs to us. And there's an open kind of working relationship there where we're trying to get Kiva Zip into all of these different micro communities through the Business Solution Center.
Okay.
So they're actively partnering with us. Last year, they supported 90 entrepreneurs through the different centers in New York, raising probably in the ballpark of $400,000 to $600,000 in New York City. But we also have partnerships with churches and grocery stores and farmers markets, and we've got student clubs. The Net Impact chapter at Yale is a partner of ours. We've got microfinance organizations. So we have a very wide range of different types of organizations that see the application of Kiva in their communities, and they take advantage of that by kind of linking up with us and pushing it into their own communities.
Yeah, so I will be happy to connect you with Goals, the association called Goals, Good Old Lower East Side, and they are based in New York, and they are really very, very, very active. A lot of activists, artists, politicians, and they are always working in having fun, and they are, working with city funding organisms. And they are very active, and I will be happy to connect you with them. So,
sweet, man, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, after I can send you my email, and we can exchange about that.
Yeah, it sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah, cheers.
Awesome. Well, I think that we won't take any more of Justin's time, but thank you so much. I know this was very helpful to me, and I'm sure that everyone else really enjoyed it as well. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, dude, totally. Have fun, guys. Reach out to me if you need anything. Justin@kiva.org.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Great weekend.
Bye. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again with all of you. 1 second.
I guess, yeah, we could also take a few moments if anyone had any reactions or thoughts or hanging questions. You're welcome to share them now. That was really interesting.
Are you tweeting? Because
Yeah.
it's very important subject, and you can have a huge promotion in Twitter or in Facebook too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a great idea. I've sent out a bunch of tweets. He said some really great phrases that just kind of transform, I think, my previous understanding of what the whole investment and loan business was about or could be about.
Mm-hmm.
And you you are tweeting according to university account or your own account or
The MCN account.
MCN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Millennium Campus Network. We have, I think, a pretty broad reach.
Okay. So I will search it in my Twitter, and I will retweet it.
I can also send you the link to our profile.
Yeah, please.
Great. Yeah, it'd be great if you could retweet. That's a really great idea.
Yeah, I'm very connected with the UN networks in New York, so we are always active. So
awesome. Yeah, what did you think, Jamal?
Yeah, so really great subjects. Like this is the second time that I participated with you, and yeah, always very interesting. And I think the basis of the development. So like the community is something like really crucial. So
yeah. Yeah, and if you want to contact him, his email again is in the chat. It's just justin@kiva.org. So pretty easy to remember.
Okay.
But yeah, he's very accessible. He's very friendly. As I'm sure you guys noted from his talk. So I'm sure he'd love to chat with you after.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any other thoughts about that presentation before we move on? No. Well, I mean, I've always been a fan of the Kiva model. I think it's a really interesting idea to start with only $25, and that I like how he said the recycled globally. I think that's a really interesting model, and it's one of those models that when you hear it, it's so simple, but it's also very innovative when they started it. So I was very excited to hear him speak. But yeah, we can move on now if you guys don't have any other thoughts for now. Okay. Can you guys see it? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So yeah, again, I think that we're not having the Millennium Fellows with us today. Hopefully next time. So we'll just keep going. But now I was going to talk a little bit about the subject, so best practices for working with underserved communities. These are just some of my thoughts, and feel free to stop me anytime if you guys have, if you disagree with me or you have anything to add or any other topics that you think should be addressed here. So the first topic that I think of when I think of this topic is paternalism. So we talked a little bit about this in the Millennium Fellowship, but this is just a definition. People define paternalism in different ways, but this is a definition that I found. So paternalism, the policy or practice on the part of people in positions of authority of restricting the freedom and responsibilities of those subordinate to them in the subordinate's supposed best interest. I think of it really as the idea of a mutually exclusive giver and receiver. So really a one-way relationship where someone has all the power and the other person is at a real disadvantage. I think that there's several problems with this. One being that they're not viewing, in terms of this topic, you're not really viewing beneficiaries as equals, but as, again, subordinates, which is a problem. and it's really failing to recognize, I think, the tremendous value of beneficiaries' opinions. So beneficiary being the person that is receiving the service. So if you're a nonprofit, the people that you're trying to help, obviously they have tremendous value in terms of just saying how helpful your service actually is, because they're the ones that are actually using it. Does anyone have any initial thoughts on paternalism and its relationship to community partners? No? Okay. So this is just something like paternalism versus partnership. So what is the difference? So instead of paternalism, I think that it's better to hopefully work to establish and cultivate mutually beneficial partnerships. So relationship building, collaboration, mutual respect, compassion, and again, recognizing the distinctive value in beneficiaries' opinions and suggestions. So recognizing that it's not just a one-way street, that you're not the only one that's helping, but you're actually benefiting from interactions with different types of people. So how do you do this? I think that one of the most important things, at least in my experience and the people that I've talked to, in terms of establishing a local community partnership, is to conduct a needs assessment. So there's many different definitions of a needs assessment, but I think it can be broadly defined as attempts at estimating problems that exist within a community or client population. They're really crucial tools for decisions regarding prioritization of funding and program development. And they're especially important, I think, with, as the quote says, at-risk and underserved audiences. Needs assessments must be important prelude to program implementation evaluation. They really strive to answer the question, what are beneficiaries actually saying they need? Do they match your assumptions or preconceived notions? I think this is really important when you're trying to help people that are outside of your current community. So for instance, if you're an organization in the US and you're trying to help like GloMed, like a global or a local community in Africa. So you might think that they need, you might think that you need water, but when you actually talk to the people and conduct the needs assessment, you find that they need shoes. And I think it's kind of the ability to recognize that discrepancy and take that into account and not just say, oh, my opinion is correct, let me just give them water, instead of what they're saying they actually need. So some strategies for needs assessments. You can develop and distribute a community needs assessment survey, conduct in-depth interviews with target beneficiaries. I definitely recommend that one. I think that one's really helpful. Meet with community influencers and leaders to assess perceived needs, meet with community partners to assess perceived needs, and adjust, again, the proposed program or product accordingly to match up and address the on-the-ground needs of target beneficiaries. I think it's really, really important just to make sure that what your service is providing is what the community is saying they actually need. And again, not doing the paternalistic view that you're automatically right and that they don't know what they need. So another big thing that I wanted to hit in this topic, and I think that's really been important for AslyumConnect, is to integrate beneficiaries into organizational decision-making, allowing them to really have a say past the initial needs assessment. I think that many organizations, it's really easy to do the initial needs assessment, and it's great, but I think that it's definitely important to continue talking to the people that you are helping to make sure that it's still helpful. So gathering constant feedback from beneficiaries on the quality of the impact. The example I had, the Kiva programs, conversations. Raina, you asked about that. Are they actually talking to each other? And they are, as Justin said. So one of the things is conversations, so continued direct interactions between borrowers, lenders, and trustees. So if you go on their website, they actually have a page that's just devoted to that, which when I went on the website, I thought was a really good idea, because that's unedited, unfacilitated, just conversations between, the people in the organization, but also the people that they're helping and the donors. So I think that's one way to gather honest feedback really easily. And then you can also appoint beneficiaries or former beneficiaries to a role within the organization to make sure that that perspective is still represented. And then this is one of the questions that you heard me ask Justin, I think is another thing that's important when talking about community partnerships. So when to scale to additional vulnerable populations, a lot of models you can scale. But one thing that I learned is from all the summits that I've attended this year is that one thing that young entrepreneurs especially make, or young executive directors, is they try to scale too quickly, especially if it's a niche market. And that can really be catastrophic, not just to the organization, but also to the people that you're trying to help. So the first bullet point, Elizabeth Holmes, the founder and CEO of Thronos, advises young entrepreneurs to remain mission critical and to build their impact incrementally, person by person and city by city. She thinks that nothing fails faster than a company that scales too quickly. I took that bullet point. I heard her speak at a summit that I attended, and I thought that point really resonated with me, and it was really important. And so I try to share that with other people whenever possible, because I think that's a really good way of putting it, to think person by person instead of such a large scale. And then I would just emphasize the importance of the pilot, so starting small. So for example, AslyumConnect chose to focus on aiding LGBT asylum seekers in the US rather than all asylum seekers in the US. I think that starting off small and recognizing that different populations have different needs is really important. So just a summary slide of what I just said. Summary of best practice recommendations. So focus on relationship building and avoiding paternalism. So mutual respect, establishing collaborations and partnerships, striving to ensure cultural competence. I think it's great to conduct a thorough needs assessment and to make sure that you're actually using that needs assessment to adjust your product or program accordingly. Continuing to gather feedback from the people you're actually helping pass the needs assessment. Offering people that you're helping or people that you've helped a role in your organization to make sure that that perspective is still represented, and piloting with a small sample. And I think avoiding scaling too quickly is really important. So does anyone have any thoughts about, I know I just flew through that pretty quickly, but does anyone have any thoughts about those recommendations or anything to add or note before I talk a little bit about how AslyumConnect relates to this topic?
I think we could just take even a few minutes maybe to just kind of ponder this and maybe take notes on questions or thoughts you might want to share.
Okay, yeah, let's take like 3 minutes.
Katie, would you be able to scroll to, I think, the previous slide?
Which one? This one?
This
one?
Could you just maybe go one by one? Sorry,
yeah,
what
that's
number?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I can't read that quickly. I'm like a pretty slow visual absorber. Okay, thank you so much.
Not this one?
Maybe one up. And others are welcome to stop me if they want to take a longer look at any of the slides.
This one?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
This one? Okay.
And you're welcome to switch to other ones because I think I just found what I needed.
Okay. I'll keep it here unless anyone wants me to move it. All right, it's been like 2.5 minutes. So does anyone have any thoughts, comments about this topic?
I have some questions, but I believe that you'll be answering them in your next section on how you can apply this.
Okay.
How AslyumConnect has applied this. I don't know if any others have thoughts or questions.
Any other like thoughts from anyone's own experiences, topics that I missed? No? I covered everything? Yay. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So how does this topic relate to AslyumConnect? For those of you who don't know, so I, again, am the co-founder, co-director of AslyumConnect. We try to help LGBT asylum seekers in the US. So what we're doing is we're building the first online centralized database of service providers for LGBT asylum seekers in the US. And if anyone has any like in-depth questions about what we do, feel free to stop me and I can go into it more detail. So I think I'm just going to pull some things I think that we did, or some things that I learned from just starting that organization and working with such a vulnerable or considered underserved population. Just briefly, LGBT asylum seekers, when they come to the US, they often can't work. Many have no social support. A lot of them do end up homeless, and there's really a lack of awareness and a lack of resources that are going to LGBT asylum seekers. So again, they're a very vulnerable population. So one of the things that we thought was really, really important to do before we did start trying to provide these people with resources was to conduct our own needs assessment. And here are just 5, a summary of the steps that we tried to take before we launched AslyumConnect. So first, we conducted a series of meetings with organizations who provide services for asylees. So those people who've already received asylum, to understand what is currently being provided, as well as to uncover any underlying gaps. So we thought that what they needed was, one of the big needs was a resource catalog by location. And like, thankfully, we discovered that the existing service model for LGBTQ asylum seekers does lack a comprehensive centralized online catalog. So that did match up. The second step we took was to interview LGBT asylum seekers in the US who, again, consistently identified their main need to be a user-friendly database of resources. So when they were arriving in the United States, they really didn't have any way of pulling up information of the different organizations that could help them. So where do they go for housing? Where do they go for food? Where do they go for social support? That information really wasn't in one centralized location, which made people with often not the best English skills, made it very difficult for them to find the resources that they needed to survive and integrate into the US. So that's really the need that we're trying to address. We also attended multiple meetings and forums on the subject of seeking asylum in the US. So here we're not just interacting with the people that we're trying to help, but we're also listening to other people who've dedicated their lives or their time to trying to help this population, trying to look at why haven't they created that database of resources? Is there a reason for that? Is it just lack of funding or lack of time? And we also were able to hear from asylees, so those people who've actually gone through the process of seeking asylum, who did reflect that despite the fact that they had access to technology during the asylum seeking process. And I'll stop there because I think that's an important note that a lot of people, when they hear what we're doing, they get very confused because you don't necessarily think that LGBT asylum seekers would have that access to technology, that access to a computer or a phone in order to access our database. But the interesting thing is that they do. But they still, even with that access to technology, they still lack that adequate information to meet their basic human needs because, again, it can be a little bit difficult if you're trying to Google search what resources can help you in your area if you're an LGBT asylum seeker, given that you're new to the United States and you don't have maybe the best English in the world. We also collaborated with immigration and refugee professionals who informed us that currently assistance for LGBT asylum seekers in the U.S. is one-dimensional. So when you think of an LGBT asylum seeker, the people that are coming to the United States due to persecution based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, you really do think, oh, the first step that they have to take is to receive that legal asylum. But what a lot of people don't think about is that they're human beings who really do, during that process of seeking asylum, they require much more than just legal assistance. They also obviously require food and housing, but also that community and social support. And I think that's one of the things that AslyumConnect really emphasizes that other people just weren't, was the fact that they need to make those human connections, like Justin said, in order to really feel comfortable in the United States. Often these people are very traumatized by the experiences they've had in their past countries. So that's something that we definitely try to do, to take that much more multidimensional approach. And then we also lastly drew upon the personal experiences of Saeed, who's my co-founder and co-director of AslyumConnect. So Saeed was actually an LGBT asylum seeker himself. So I think that's an invaluable perspective. And the reason really why AslyumConnect started was because Saeed, going through this process, really noted that there was no centralized database of resources, and that would have been really, really helpful when he was actually seeking asylum himself. So I have this slide, our team and advisors, and I pulled this up just to note to the point that I made before of integrating beneficiaries or the people you're trying to help into the organization. So again, Saeed, you can see him right there. He had that experience. He personally went through that experience, and so I think that is a perspective that I don't have. So I think together it's good that obviously that we have him, as well as our advisory team is on the bottom. So you can see Jack Lorenzar. So she actually was the first LGBT asylum seeker or lesbian from Mexico to ever receive asylum in the United States. So she's actually a former LGBT asylum seeker herself as well. So we, right off the bat, have two people who've actually gone through that experience and can tell us when we're bouncing ideas off each other if, it's something that's feasible, if it's something that we should be looking at. And they also have incredible insight into, what this population really needs. And then I was just going to touch upon quickly our organizational vision, where AslyumConnect is trying to go. Currently, we're a volunteer-run initiative, but we're hoping to transform into a registered nonprofit organization. So our organizational vision, I think, is really relevant to this topic because we're trying to have beneficiaries actually take over the organization in the long run. So right now, it's the thought of having 4 asylum seekers by asylees. So again, asylum seeker is someone that's seeking asylum in the U.S., and asylee is someone who's received asylum successfully in the U.S. So our idea is to really try to recruit asylees across the country to serve as city captains for our catalog. So our catalog is, again, the first database of resources for LGBT asylum seekers in the U.S. So our idea is to have these city captains lead the effort when we expand. So we're the database for Seattle right now. We're piloting in Seattle. But when we expand to additional cities like Philadelphia, New York City, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, we need people on the ground in each of those cities to really lead the data collection, verification efforts. And so we think who better to do that than asylees living in those cities who've actually interacted with those organizations that can help them and have these insights on which organization is helpful, which organization is not helpful, and where should we be looking, where should we be referring people. So short-term planning, again, recruit asylees across the country to serve as city captains. We would then train these city captains to complete resource collection, verification, and migration for our catalog. And this would also help to create short-term paid work for an extremely vulnerable population while they are adapting to a new country and culture. So the AslyumConnect catalog is really designed to help LGBT asylum seekers, those people seeking asylum, in the process of seeking asylum. And then this would be a way to grow our catalog while also helping LGBT asylees. So those people who've actually received legal asylum. But as you can imagine, just because you receive legal asylum does not mean that all your problems just magically disappear. And often LGBT asylees do have a very hard time obtaining employment. So in long term, we hope to create a self-sufficient enterprise. Our idea is actually to appoint one of the city captains, one of the LGBT asylees, to take over as executive director and transition our initiative from a volunteer initiative into a full-time 501c3 nonprofit here in the U.S. Run by asylees for asylum seekers. Our goal has always been and will continue to be to transform how LGBT asylum seekers connect with basic human needs service providers in the United States to really streamline that interaction and minimize the uncertainty that comes with arriving in a country and not having any information on where to go for basic human needs. And I think one of the big questions for us, and I think really relevant question, is when will we scale? So that's why I asked Justin that question, because it is relevant to AslyumConnect, and I always like to hear people's opinions on this. So the first question is when to scale our catalog model to additional cities in the U.S. So we are currently piloting our catalog in Seattle, Washington. So it's the database right now is exclusive to Seattle, Washington. If you were to go on our website, you would just see Seattle. And so we've decided we'll scale after the pilot demonstrates our catalog is doing more good than harm. So when we receive positive feedback from catalog test users, when we make the adjustments, improvements based on interviews with the people who are using it, and relevant service providers. So we don't have any definitive timeline. I don't have a date on when I'm going to expand, to a different city. I think the pilot really does take as long as it takes and can't be rushed. It's really, really important to make sure that it is working. And the second question for us is measuring when to scale our catalog model to additional vulnerable populations in the US. It is an option for us just because the idea of organizing basic human needs resources into one centralized database for a vulnerable population can be scaled to additional populations if you just tweak the verification. So, for instance, like the obvious populations it could scale to are other asylum seeker and refugee populations, people who are coming to the US not because of sexual orientation or gender identity, but maybe because of political persecution or religious identity. It can also be scaled to homeless LGBT youth. Just change the subcategories, add an age range. That's, I think, the obvious populations that I would scale to first. So we plan to just continue to take ongoing solicitations of our sample groups, testimonials, and feedback on this basic model to see how helpful it is and how you can improve it. And I think that if we do scale to additional vulnerable populations, it would involve conducting a thorough needs assessment for each population before we scale to make sure that each population that we think could utilize this actually does want it. And then conducting performance review of our current model and expanding our advisory team and pool of partner organizations to incorporate new areas of expertise. So for instance, if you're scaling to help another asylum seeker population, such as religious identity, having people that have gone through that process or people that have, done extensive research on that process would be important, I think, at that time. And that is my kind of connection on why AslyumConnect would lead this webinar and what I've learned from this. But I'd love to hear from any of you. If you guys have questions about AslyumConnect, if you've learned anything that I've touched upon from your own experiences, now is the time. I know there's a lot too, so if you guys want me to go back to any of the slides, feel free.
So I actually have several questions.
Okay.
But I'll just start with one.
Thank you.
So I was, first of all, that was very thorough, and that was great. I love the connections you made also to Justin's presentation. I thought that was great.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so my first question is, I don't want to make this like a tough question, but you talked about having beneficiaries as a key part of your organization's leadership.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious why, but I was wondering if you could say how you feel that your role is important for the success of AslyumConnect.
No, of course. That's the question I think that I always get, actually. What is your, so it's funny. Every time I haven't mentioned my own, so when I do presentations now for AslyumConnect, the first thing I say will be my personal connection to this cause, because if I don't, it's the first question that I get. Go ahead.
I feel free to answer that question, but my question was actually answering, I totally know your connection, and I think you're important in this. I was wondering, like, skill set wise, what you are.
Oh, okay. Okay. In terms of like experience, or?
Just so the beneficiaries can share what services they think are important, which ones they aren't finding.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, like, what do you...
Okay, yeah. I think I understand the question, but if my answer doesn't answer your question, then just tell me. I think it's, so for me and Saeed, I think it's definitely really, really important to have both of us, and I'll tell you a little bit why, just briefly. So Saeed obviously has a very direct personal connection, which is so helpful. And one of the things I think that's good about our working together is that we have different strengths in terms of, he's really, really good at public speaking, networking, attracting attention and resources to our cause, whereas I'm much more in terms of writing and organizational. So some things that I do personally is I do a lot of op-eds about this cause. I also organize much of it and work with the staff. So I think that's something that I bring. I think also, though, just being a different perspective within the LGBT community is just so valuable. We try to have all of those letters in that acronym represented. We don't yet have the transgender perspective, but I will get it but we have a wide variety of perspectives because, Saeed's perspective being an LGBT asylum seeker, a male LGBT asylum seeker who identifies as a gay man is very different from mine growing up in the U.S. identifying as a gay woman. And I think that both of those perspectives, being a U.S. organization is very important. And I think that also just being a part of the LGBT community, the cause when I first heard it really resonated with me. And that's where like my passion comes from. Just being able to relate, not obviously there's different varying degrees of being able to like hiding who you are, but being able to relate to that experience, I think motivates me to continue to go with AslyumConnect. And then also I would just say one last thing, having allies on our team. So people who don't identify within the acronym, I actually think is really, really important as well, because it shows other, straight people that this is a cause that everyone can get behind and that it's worth supporting, and you don't need to just be gay or be transgender or be bisexual to support and work within our organization. I definitely think that's very important as well. Does that kind of answer your question? Sorry.
That answered it perfectly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Strangely phrased question. It was intended to be more reflexive. Like you always talk about the importance of the other members.
Oh.
I just wanted to hear you articulate how you said important because I think you are really, really important.
Thank you. I try. I guess, yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you have another question? I mean, I can keep going on that forever, but
I want to give others a chance first.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, also feel free, like it doesn't need to be a question for me. If you guys have something to say that you think would be relevant, again, like Julian said, she's recording this, then other people will see it. So if you guys would like to share something from your own experience that you think other people should know, feel free. And of course, you can also ask me questions, but.
I mean, I'm happy to
keep going, Julian. Give them more time to think.
Okay, so my second question was, I know that AslyumConnect is specifically focused on providing access to like legal, financial, health services, and so on. But I was wondering if they're also doing, or if you're thinking about ways to help asylum seekers navigate potential like discrimination just like in the public. I know that's not the focus of the catalog, but I was wondering if like, that's somehow incorporated in other ways.
Yeah, so just to clarify, what we do is we try, that's different than different organizations, is try to match people with what we call basic human needs resources. So like you did say, like different categories being legal, social services, counseling, medical, all the things that a person will need throughout a year. What was I going to say? I had it and then I was like, I lost. Can you repeat the question? Sorry. I had like a brain moment.
Are there ways you or anyone else?
Oh, discrimination. Yeah. Yes. So I guess one way, I'll say two things about that. So indirectly, I think one thing that we've done really well is to bring a lot of awareness to this cause. And then I think that bringing the awareness helps to break down discrimination. It's not directly helping asylum seekers, but it's helping the public realize more about this cause, which I just think is really important. In terms of the long run, in terms of discrimination, I think one of the things that we hope to do is to, when the catalog gets more users and helps more people, we hope to implement kind of a mentor-mentee program, which would match an LGBT asylee with an LGBT asylum seeker. And I think that would be really helpful in terms of navigating discrimination and in terms of giving advice on how to go through this process. Another thing that we're hoping to do is to add to the catalog a kind of chat function where, again, like LGBT asylees could give advice, maybe matching them to the country they came from, because different countries, obviously, you'll have different experiences coming to the U.S., different cultural shock. So I think that match would be really, really helpful. Right now, when people do contact us, we can have one of our, like Jack, our advisor, I matched her with someone recently just to give advice. They're not from the same country, but I do think that just having someone to talk to that's been through that experience and done it successfully is really important. And then I think one other thing that I would note here is that when we have conference calls with different service providers that have helped this population, such as the Unitarian Universalist United Nations office, one of their big things that they hit was verifying resources and making sure they're culturally competent. Because, for instance, you can verify a resource like an English language class for refugees and immigrants and asylum seekers. They can be like, they can check out in terms of being able to help that population, but you need to verify also that they're LGBT friendly, because a lot of times people don't realize, like, and one of the reasons why we did start with LGBT asylum seekers was because LGBT asylum seekers are often I don't know the word for it, scared, but like don't want to interact with other asylum seeker populations, because often those are the people that they're fleeing from. So making sure that all the resources are LGBT friendly as well, because on immigration friendly, I think that's just such a niche area, and that helps to minimize the discrimination that people using our catalog will hopefully not kind of experience. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that was perfect. And I also really appreciated that note about cultural competence. It's like, I think a lot of spaces are coded and not everyone always feels welcome within it. So that you can have the resource, but if people don't feel comfortable using it, then it might as well not exist. That's a challenge, I think, for community-based initiatives.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about us is that we're working with the LGBT community, which has gotten a lot of kind of criticism about not being culturally competent. And then you're also working with the immigration community, which often other people in that community are not LGBT friendly. So finding providers that it's safe for those people to go to is very difficult. If you look at our catalog right now, it's like it doesn't have that many resources listed because we wanted to err on the side of caution. It's better, to list fewer resources that we think are safe than to list, a lot and be like, they might be safe, hopefully. So I think that's just another note on that. Did we lose Jamel?
Yeah, he messaged everyone he has to go to work.
Okay. Did you have other questions?
I did have a last if no one else does.
I mean, it's just you and Raina now, so.
Like that he said, I have to live.
Oh. He might have intended to write leave. But...
I have to live. Oh. Sam.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Katie. It's really wonderful to hear a little bit more about your philosophy and context and the work that you're what drives you. And it seems like AslyumConnect is really intentional and thoughtful about its process and its growth. So I really appreciate all of the opportunities to learn more about it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and share my last question. This was easy. So when you were having these meetings to figure out, like when you're conducting the needs assessment, is there anything that like just completely surprised you in terms of a resource or need that was absent, or a resource that the asylum seekers wanted?
I think that I would just go back to when I started sitting in on these meetings and like events, it was very new to me, and I think all of it was surprising just because I didn't really know. Like before Saeed told me, like before I met Saeed, I did not know what an LGBT asylum seeker was, and I really did not know the kind of global landscape for LGBT rights. So just having asylees, it's usually an asylee who will sit in front of you at an event, the people who've actually received asylum, and tell their story, just because it's safer than someone who's actually still in the process of seeking asylum, who do have confidentiality concerns. But I think it's just really powerful to have someone sit there and say such a story that honestly doesn't, in the US today at least, doesn't sound like it could be true, and just to realize that it is true in different places of the world is very, very powerful. And I think that, again, for me, it was very, when I first heard, like, it was something that I didn't really think of, I guess I'll just point back to the Unitarian Universalist United Nations office when they did say that you need to be very careful and be culturally competent. And they, again, used the example of ESL classes and saying that a lot of the times the LGBT asylum seekers they work with do face prejudice and discrimination and bad experiences in the ESL classes that they're trying to learn in, because the other people in that class are coming from the countries where that prejudice is very alive and well, and they still have those prejudice. So I think that was also, that kind of, I don't know, it was just very eye-opening for me, and it made me realize how important both of those verification processes are, not just the asylum-friendly, but also the LGBT-friendly, and making sure that any service provider really does have both. I think that was the most surprising to me, because again, if you're not really aware of that population or just hearing about it for the first time, I don't think it's something that you necessarily think of. And then I guess something that usually surprises everyone that I talk to, and the second question after the question of my personal connection is often, oh, that sounds like a great idea, but how do they have access to technology? It was very surprising to hear from almost everyone that they do have access to like mobile phones and computers through public libraries. To me, that was surprising because, again, they're a very vulnerable population, and you wouldn't think that. But I think one of the service providers summed it up well when they said, people don't think they have access to electronics and the internet, but for many people around the world, and there are many statistics on that, but they said that mobile phones act as a lifeline, and that will be like the one thing that they do have. So utilizing that, the one thing that they do have to help them acquire more attention or support, I think is why AslyumConnect will be so helpful. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was perfect. And also that part about phones, there's a lot of initiatives that are dedicated to providing like, devices.
Yeah.
And now I'm beginning to wonder if like adequate needs assessments were conducted, and maybe we're over exaggerating the need for like cell phone provision in certain places.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting. I guess I would ask, like, maybe they're trying to give them, like, more sophisticated phones with more functionality. Of course, not everyone's going to have a phone, but, like, tons of people. Like, I read a statistic that we use sometimes. I think it's, like, the people in, I want to say it's, like, South Africa have just as much access to mobile phones as people in the U.S. Like, there's, like, people around the world are really, really getting phones, even, like, the most remote village. So being able to utilize that they actually have, I think is really important and interesting, and will help people, get out of bad situations quicker, I think. Any other questions or thoughts?
Not from me.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's the end of my presentation. So unless anyone has any closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Katie. This was a great session. It was also really wonderful to hear from Jason and
Justin.
Or Justin, sorry. Yeah.
No.
Glad he wasn't here to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, he was good. He was really good. I liked his honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I thought it was impressive how he didn't have slides, but he was just able to like talk for like 15 minutes. You can tell like he's really passionate about it. So I appreciated that. I guess just one question, organizational question. In terms of like the blog post, you can see that Alex isn't here. Do you want me to do it? Do you want me to try to do it? Because he usually does it for me, but unfortunately he works right now. So
I think what we could do is I have some notes in the post form survey email that I'm going to send out.
Uh-huh.
So if there's anything in there that maybe what I could do is just do like a tweet compilation. Maybe we could see if that's a way to get people to like increase readership, because maybe it's easier to read like 140 character blurbs that recap the forum. Maybe it'd be interesting.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I can play around with that.
Okay.
I can contact you via email afterwards to.
Yeah, I wrote down like not that much, but I wrote down like some things that he said so I can like send it to you if it'd be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, no problem.
So, yeah, I don't know. Raina, were you about to say something?
No, I think that's a great idea. I think that's a really good way to
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so I just want to say the same, Katie. That was, again, another wonderful session. I thought the topics we covered were so interesting, and they all were very interconnected, which I think is I mean, it makes sense, but it's not always easy to facilitate something like that.
It's a large topic. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So great job with that.
Thank you. Thanks for your help.
Yeah, of course. And always, I'll be sharing this on YouTube and on social media. I hope you all share it with your
Yes, I will.
your colleagues. I think there's a lot of really key information in this webinar that could be useful to a lot of people and interesting
Hopefully.
to people. Yeah, so I guess
Awesome.
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Have a great rest of the day, and we'll be in touch
Thank you.
soon.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good weekend.